All right. Thank you everyone for attending this webinar. Srividya, did you have a question? I see your hands raised up. You could unmute, and if you have a question, I'd be happy to answer your question. If not, we will have a general question and answer towards the end as well. Oh, okay. And at any time, if anyone has a question, we do have a chat feature, and you could always ask us any questions. And again, towards the end, we will also have an opportunity to do a questions and answer, as well as taking any comments for this meeting as well. It is just a little after 6 o'clock, so we'll get started right away.
All right, Young, do you want me to go ahead and kick it off?
All right. Thank you, Joelle. Perfect.
Yeah.
There we go.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the Environmental Justice Element Implementation webinar. We are all really happy to spend some time with you tonight talking about the EJ element in Sacramento County and how we're implementing it. And we are really happy you can make it on a rainy night like tonight. You may not recognize my name or maybe some of the other staff members that are on this slide here. And so I wanted to introduce myself and the team here tonight. My name is Joelle Inman. I am a principal planner that oversees the long range planning team. So I'm essentially the new Todd Smith, which are big shoes to fill there. And so I'm pretty new to the long range team and to the environmental justice element. So I'm going to be learning tonight as well. Also on the team and new is Jessie Shin. She is a senior planner and formerly Todd Taylor. You might have worked with him or seen his name on some other things, but he has left the county and Jessie is his replacement. And of course, Young tonight, he's been with us over the years. And so I just wanted to introduce myself and our team. And of course, we'll get going here. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Young, to start.
Awesome. Thank you, Joelle, and thank you everyone for coming to our webinar today. I know it's a rainy night, and hopefully I'll make it very fun and informative for you. I do want to note that this webinar is being recorded, and once recorded, it will be available on our EJ website. Give us maybe a day or two to get those updated. We also do have this chat feature, as I mentioned. At any time of this presentation, if you have any questions, please ask us and we'll take our time to answer those questions as well. As I mentioned earlier, towards the end of our presentation, we'll spend some time to answer any other questions that you may have, or if you have any comments or some great ideas, we'll also listen to those comments as well. All right. Just to give you a quick background of our today's meeting agenda, I'll be giving you a background of the environmental justice element and what we as a county have been implementing so far. As I mentioned, we'll have a question and comments portion, finishing up with next steps for environmental justice element for this year. And I do see a lot of familiar names. I'm happy to see you guys again. Again, this purpose of this meeting is to provide you with the history of our county environmental justice element and the implementation accomplishments of 2023. But as we go through the history of our county's EJ element, I'll be sharing with you some of the accomplishment that we have already accomplished before 2023 this year. A little bit different from 2 years ago, we are now utilizing a survey to really gauge the priority for our residents and our community members, just 6 stakeholders. If you have received the email, there was a survey link. That survey will be open until December 18th. So if you haven't taken the survey, you are it is still available, and we encourage you to take those survey. Survey is about 8 questions long, and we'll be asking you what's the basically what is needed in your community. And at the end of our collection of the survey, we'll be summarizing the results from the survey, and that will also be posted on our website. But more importantly, these survey results will be going to our DEI, which is our department executive meeting. So our county executives will be actually looking through the survey results and determining the priority for planning department for 2024. So I would say it's a pretty important survey. It helps us understand what is needed for each community, and it helps us understand which program to prioritize for next year. And at any time and at any year, if you have any ideas or questions, we also have an email address, envjustice@saccounty.gov. Give us an email if you have any questions. If you have great ideas, we'd be also happy to hear those out and also hopefully to implement those as well. So to start, the brief history of environmental justice element is that state law, SB 1000, which is the environmental justice and local land use planning, required a jurisdiction to have an environmental justice element in the general plan. And this calls out for fair treatment of people of all races, culture, and incomes with respect to the development, adoption, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. And as I mentioned, the purpose of environmental justice element is to address our public health risk and our environmental justice concerns. And our county had option to basically update our existing general plan to include some of these program implementation. However, county actually elected to emphasize the importance of environmental justice element by creating a separate standalone document that has same weight as any other mandatory elements of the county's general plan. So just like as we require housing plans, housing element, or our agricultural element, our environmental justice element also had the same exact weight and importance as all the other elements as well. And we also broke up the approach into two different phases. Our phase one really focused on the baseline research, scoping, and preliminary policies, while our phase two was building up on phase one. So in phase one, we did a lot of research using available online databases, looking at what area, zip code, and census code have higher levels of crime or levels of groundwater contamination, pollutions, income. And through those exercises and utilizing our existing community boundaries, we have established 4 environmental justice community during our phase one. And those include North Highland and Foothill Farms, West Arden Arcade, North Vineyard, and South Sacramento. And starting on phase two, as I mentioned, we built up on the phase one. So what we did was to establish our boundaries of the communities and also baseline research, as I mentioned, the types of pollution level or their access level to the fresh food. And with this information, we were able to go out with the public to confirm what our research was. And we were also able to do policy development along with our community members. And part of the community, part of the phase two also included pretty extensive community outreach. We had 7 pop-up booths at various community events in those 4 communities. We also had a web survey. This was available in 7 different languages. We also had 3 big community workshops, as well as separate meetings with our community-based organizations and different stakeholders within the county. And through these outreach, and we have determined 7 different topics to cover in our environmental justice element, which I'll be going over soon. So our civic engagement, crime prevention, food access, promotion of physical activity, access to public facilities, reducing pollution exposure, and maintaining safe and sanitary homes. I do want to emphasize that while all of these topics we collaborated with our stakeholders, I do want to mention that the crime prevention was one of the elements that is not required by the state. However, as our research and our communication with our stakeholders, we have learned that this was a very important topic, and therefore we have actually added a crime prevention as one of the topics in our environmental justice element. So for civic engagement, the purpose of this topic is to ensure that there are all the opportunities for all persons to participate in the decision-making process. And one big implementation program that we have for this civil engagement is to establish a community outreach strategy. This is really more for our internal county users, but this is to provide a framework for all the county departments to utilize to participate in meaningful two-way communication with our public on all the aspects of the county governance and how we deliver our services. And I would like to emphasize how important this is because when we were creating environmental justice element, we have realized that it's not just the planning department, but it's all the department in the county and even other agency that has to help us implement these programs. Not to mention that a lot of times we have found that in environmental justice environmental justice community, a lot of people speak different languages, and I think and we thought it was most important to deliver the language that they speak the most comfortably and fluently. So we have continued to work with our public information office. We have created additional social media and mailing list presence. So if you probably forgot my email, that is one of the things, one of the many outreach strategies that we are trying to improve. Not to mention that countywide, we now have an on-call contract with our translator services. So without going through individual contract process, we've made it very easy for county employees to get translation and interpreter services as requested. However, we still do have a lot of work to do in terms of creating a full framework. So these are some of the work that we're still working on, and we do understand the importance of this implementation program. Moving on to the crime prevention, as I mentioned, this was something that was unique to Sacramento County. And as you know, the fear of crime could actually discourage residents from accessing all the services that meet the environmental justice objective. To explain this a little bit more, if people do not feel safe going to the park, then they'll not be utilizing the park. And the park gives great benefit for promotion of physical activity. That's what we mean by, fear of crime could actually discourage residents from getting the services that they need. In that, we have, as a planning department, we have actually already incorporated crime prevention through environmental design. So this program basically creates a design program to look into how we could safely reduce the crime rate by designing. And when I mean designing, it's more of a siting. How can we site the fence, or how can we create some design element to reduce the crime rate? To do that, our planning department has now incorporated these design elements to our county design guidelines. So our county design guideline basically incorporates these crime prevention through environmental design, as well as for some of the uses such as convenience store. We also have our sheriff department to staff and to review those entitlements to make sure that there are safety concerns are addressed. Secondly, we also have a program to support the youth, to create for youth master plan, to provide a vision and roadmap to improve and enhance overall quality of life for our youth. And back in 2021, Board of Supervisor has established Behavioral Health Youth Advisory Board that actually looks at the overall improvement and overall health and quality of life for the youth. We're still working with our team to make sure whatever that youth master plan they come forward, that the planning department and all the other county department is able to help implement those master plan as well. And I also want to talk about food access because food plays a very critical role in the health economy, but culture of a sustainable community. And as I mentioned, when we did our phase 1 research, we found that a lot of community members are from our ethnic communities. So it is very important that they also have access to these cultural food that they're used to. So one big element that we have is the food action plan. This actually has multiple components to it. Actually, there is a food action plan as well as food assessment. So we're looking at basically from farm to your table, but also we're also looking at how the waste even is going through and back into the fertilizing to back into the farm. So we're looking at the entire holistic vision in a full closed circle of how the food is created and maintained and waste and how we could save those throughout the county. And we are working with our Public Health Department as well as Sacramento Food Policy Council. They are doing bulk of the work for our food action plan, and we are very lucky to have our nonprofit organization and community-based organizations stepping up and creating these awesome plans for the county. Secondly, we also have been requiring more healthy food access. In planning department, we are now requiring that certain convenience stores, as in liquor stores in our EJ community, to have a certain portion of healthy food available for purchase. Secondly, we are now allowing all types of edible landscaping as a common outdoor amenities and open space. Prior to that, we only kind of limited to a native plant, but after consulting with the landscape architects, edible landscaping actually has a lower water usage and then actually provides a better common outdoor amenity for a lot of people, especially living in apartment. And lastly, our county goal is to support all types of healthy food access, whether it's CalFresh, Market Match, Women and Infant and Child, and Farmers Market match system as well. We also have our physical activity, which is a large contributor to the physical and mental health of our residents. When we did the research, we have also found that active people tend to live longer and have lower risk for a lot of disease. So we have two main objectives in this topic is to promote general physical activity. So for these, we are trying to work with our local park districts to offer more activity programs and education program, especially in our park districts that has our environmental justice communities. We're also promoting more biking, walking, and other modes of active transportation. And also, we are also working with our school district to support additional school as extra physical activity wellness services there. In doing so, our county Department of Transportation last year adopted our active transportation plan. So this combines the county's existing pedestrian master plan and bicycle master plan and combines it into one document that looks at the active transportation in the county. And I wanted to note that during the process of creating this active transportation plan, one of the component is how to prioritize these improvements. And if you look at their active transportation plan, one of the criteria for them to prioritize such improvement includes a question where is this project located within environmental justice or not? And based on that question, it gets additional priority points. And I'm mentioning this because, as I mentioned, one of the big things that we as a county employee want to do is to establish our EJ element in everything that we do. And this was one of the big projects that we received that actually incorporated the principle of our environmental justice element. So I wanted to give a little shout out to our Department of Transportation for including EJ communities for their priority contributing factor for the project. And we're almost to the end of our topics. We also have our public facilities, which is essential for creating and maintaining healthy, connected, and vibrant communities. So this one, we're trying to advocate for equitable distribution of public facilities and levels of service within our environmental justice communities. As I mentioned earlier slide, we like to give preference given to our EJ communities for our public facilities. And then last 3 years, as planning department has been working with our general services to review the county projects, which could include sidewalks, library, we have seen more projects that are located in environmental justice community, and we've seen that our general services have been actively identifying projects that are within environmental justice communities. So these are some of the changes that we are seeing in the county, and to promote our environmental justice principles in the daily activity and the work that we do. And we also have the pollution exposure, which we know through our phase 1 research, our background research, which is available on our website, that they are actually disproportionately burdened by more sources of pollution exposure. North Highland has high percentage of groundwater contamination. South Sacramento and North Highland again also has higher pollution level than the others. Same with Vineyard. There is a lot of pollution activity due to the agriculture activity in North Vineyard area. So as a county, planning department is currently preparing a climate action plan. And this is to develop the climate action plan for the county, but also prioritize climate-related investment in our EJ communities. Similar to how our active transportation prioritizes some of their programs in our EJ element, climate action plan, some of the draft language for the program also does prioritize these investments in environmental justice communities. Some of those activities that we have been supporting are electric vehicle charging stations. SMUD has been getting grants, various sources of grants, and have been working with us to identify multifamily apartments within environmental justice community that are willing to put EV charging facilities, and SMUD is going to pay for those. So we have supported SMUD in getting those grants. We also have in the program, we are also trying to reduce the urban heat island effect, because one of our background report also showed that our EJ communities also have less urban forest. So that is one of the prioritization that we are putting in our climate action plan. Last but importantly is the safe and sanitary homes. In the last few years, safe and sanitary home has been one of the top three, consistently top three topics that all of our stakeholders thought it was important. And our background research in our phase 1, we have also found that in our environmental justice community, there are higher levels of substandard housing, overcrowded housing, and we also have heard from many comments that we have done through survey that affordability, including the utility bills, can be an issue in our communities. So one of the programs that we are partnering with our SMUD is to get more prioritization in the SMUD's low income weatherization program. And as a per department and in the planning department, we're also looking into rezone and infill programs. So we're trying to rezone sites to make room for more housing, and we're also trying to ease infill development standards so that additional development could be in our EJ area. And I'll be explaining a little bit more of additional projects that we are working on, but planning department is working hard on a lot of the special planning area updates in our EJ community as well. So these are our topics that are that we've created in our phase 2, and I've given you a little bit more historical update of the implementation program that we still need to work on, or some that we have finished. And I wanted to share with you how we determine these criteria for how we need to implement. So we use 3 criteria to see how and which program to prioritize in terms of what to implement first. The first, as I mentioned throughout today's conversation, is that will it institutionalize environmental justice as part of the county's regular business practices? Second is it already funded, and do we have a staffing commitment? And third is that if it provides co-benefit across other related community issues and other county priorities. As I mentioned earlier, we are seeing a lot of projects, not just from the planning department across the county, um, that identifies whether the project is within environmental justice community or not. And we are seeing that as a really good sign that even though it's a very slow work, our conversation that we need to prioritize our improvements and investment in environmental justice community is going through. So I wanted to share some of the big implementation that we've done. The very first one I wanted to share because this was a very big event for not just the planning department, but all of the county. We had the very first racial equity fair that was hosted by our racial equity team. And this fair was to bring all the county employees and departments and the community leaders and activists and residents together for 2 days. And this event was held in Sac State. And this was a great opportunity for planning and environmental review to showcase the environmental justice element to the county department and other various agencies in Sacramento. And after our conversation, we have made a lot of connection with various agencies that wanted to work with us. And we also found that a lot of agencies had their own programs that closely matched our implementation program. So we have made a lot of connections and we're very excited to be working with them and collaborating with a lot of different departments of their existing program that meets the environmental justice element goals. As I mentioned, we are continuing to work on our rezone and infill program. These both program will have components where we'll prioritize improvements and investments in our EJ communities as well. Climate action plan, we're continue to working to address as much comments as possible. As I mentioned, more than a lot of implementation program prioritizes EJ communities. And it calls for the program to be implemented in EJ community first and then other communities. So, and as I mentioned, we have our Northwest Corridor update. We received a grant from SACOG to update our Northwest Corridor Avenue. So this is located in our North Highlands community. We're excited to look into our Northwest Corridor and what revitalization that we could bring to the area. Similar with the Stockton Avenue located in South Sacramento, we're looking into study the feasibility of infill development and how we could make it easier for development to happen to also revitalize our Stockton Boulevard as well. So with that being said, we also have been supporting a lot of EJ programs that we have already been working on. One of the programs that we have supported is that this year, SACRT has applied for the grant program to improve their bus stops, as well as the immediate nearby sidewalks, curb ramps, and other pedestrian infrastructures. And they have collaborated with us to determine which location in the county that they want to apply for. And we learned that actually SACRT had already utilized our environmental justice map and had already picked out all the location that the grant program, hopefully that the SACRT will be going towards the bus stops located in the environmental justice community within Sacramento County. So we're very excited for that grant program as well. Last year, we completed our Re-envision West Arden Arcade. This project was to look at our West Arden for make it more pedestrian friendly. This one was more of a design element, but we received the Award of Excellence from Sacramento Valley American Planning Association. And one of their comments, the jury mentioned our outreach program where we had sidewalk decals. So if I'm not sure if you, but during COVID times, this project was happening during our COVID times. And one of our outreach idea was to put a big sticker on the sidewalk where the project was happening to get everyone's attention. And that was one of the novel ideas that we had for community outreach. And it worked. And we hope to utilize similar big sidewalk decal to get everyone's attention as well. As always, we are continuing our internal trainings. We are also available to do any trainings to our other county department as well. And today we are doing our stakeholder meeting, which we do every year. And one of the most important thing is that this meeting will be included in our report card, which outlines all the activities that we've done this year and previous years. And as I mentioned, our survey result will be included in our report card as well. So once the survey closes, the staff will summarize the survey results, discuss among each other, and these issues will be raised to our executive level working group, which will then be raised to our Board of Supervisors for our working progress for our next year's priority. With that being said, we do also have a lot of improvements that we could do. I think one of the biggest improvement that we as a county could make, as I mentioned earlier, is the community outreach. We would love to work additionally and more with our community-based organizations because they are the ones doing the work on the ground. We would also like to have more two-way meaningful conversation and communication with our residents in our environmental justice community. We would like to have additional listening sessions, perhaps, from our resident rather than us talking to you, and to provide more than one update, so more than regular update with our stakeholders, regular updates. Some of the idea is to establish maybe a community ambassador and also showing up to our community meetings. So maybe showing up to, not just showing up, but maybe hopefully we could get an invitation to local community-based organization groups so that we could understand what they do and give us, so that we could have more opportunity for collaboration. With that, we also are looking forward to collaborate with other agencies. Planning department can't implement all of the environmental justice element. We know that we have to work with other agencies to implement a lot of these implementation that we have. Tree planting, we're actively working with Sacramento Tree Foundation, as well as MUD, who's been very helpful, as well as the low income weatherization and air quality monitoring. We're working with our air quality management district. As I mentioned, we hope to work closely again with our Sacramento Food Policy and our Department of Health Services. We also know that DOT is actively always looking into knowing which sidewalks to improve. We like to, and they have already been incorporating our environmental justice element and community into those as well. And as I mentioned, better transportation options and improved transit stops. We're working with SACRT, hopefully, the grant. And there's a lot much more that we like to collaborate as well. So these are some of the current recommended priorities for 2024. These are, I want to say, a very draft because we still need to incorporate your thoughts and the survey results before we give this recommended priorities to our Board of Supervisors. The first thing is to working executive level working group. In order for all counties to understand, all county department to understand the environmental justice element, we have to have our executives really understand and elevate the issues in that group. So we hope to be working with additionally and more closely with our executive level working group. And I've heard our director gave us an update that there are going to be additional members in this executive level working group. So we're excited that this working group is still working, and we're happy to provide them with a recommendation for the environmental justice element. I know I said multiple times throughout this meeting, but we are trying to and continuing to develop an outreach strategy, and we're working closely with our public information office to provide that best practice and increasing funding for our multilingual services, and to develop framework for all county department and all county employees to use. As I mentioned, a lot of our projects aren't just simple projects, they are years long. So we are still trying to finish a lot of the priorities that we started working on, which include climate action plan, rezone, and infill as well. And then, as I mentioned, we hope to get additional priority survey from the survey. So if you haven't taken the survey, it is going to be open until December 18th. So I would encourage you to take the survey and share with our community members in our EJ community. So with that being said, we are going to turn it back to you and see if you had any questions on any of the implementation that we have been doing or are planning on doing, or if you'd like to provide comments of what we should be focusing on. We're more than happy to answer your questions. And I will start with some of questions that I received from Herman. Herman had asked about lead exposure, mold, and particle matters in our EJ communities. With that, planning department doesn't directly have a way to measure these exposures. However, as I mentioned, we are working closely with Sacramento Air Quality to see if we could actually get additional air quality monitors in other environmental justice community. They have a pretty extensive air quality monitoring system in South Sacramento, but we're hoping to get additional in our other parts of our environmental justice community. So, and definitely we would love to keep you in the loop. Our SAC EJ group definitely will keep you in the loop. And I will be asking air quality department and see if they have any updates on additional exposures. And for those questions, what I will do is once I have the answer, I will post that information on our website along with this recorded webinar. And I have see hands from Barry. I'm going to allow you to talk, but you still do have to unmute.
Real quick before we go over to Barry Young, thanks for that answer on that. I just wanted to follow up a little bit, Herman. In addition to the air quality, Sacramento Air Quality Management District, there's also the Sacramento County Environmental Management Department. So they would be reviewing things associated with like lead exposure. Now, I will say for planning projects, we tend to be reviewing those when we have a discretionary project subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, and certainly contamination and other demolition of old buildings that have lead, those types of things we would be addressing through CEQA mitigation is typically how that would work. So just wanted to add on to that, and we can reach out to EMD too to see if there's additional information that they may have. But I'll turn it over to you, Barry.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all. From what I've heard, I did have a drop out here, so I may have missed it. But from what I did hear in the presentation, is that South Sacramento has, the County of Sacramento has a robust air quality monitoring system in place. As I understand it, I believe there is one air monitoring system from AMQD south of the 50 freeway. And I don't believe any of the air monitors here in the city, or excuse me, throughout Sacramento County, which I believe there are 5 or 6, are not at the federal regulated level to which they need to be at that level for any evidence to put forward to be used in a court to incite a court action. Excuse me. If these great air monitors that are at your house, the schools and parks and whatnot, No, that's like the lowest and generic type of air monitoring that you can have. Yes, they're air monitors, but the information from those cannot be used at a court level or to create the EPA to create an EPA action. So if someone would fill me in regards to this robust air quality monitoring in South Sacramento, to which we have the highest air quality monitoring polluted air in the area, pretty much all of Sacramento. Let's just call it what it is. But just before you answer that question, which environmental justice group is the County of Sacramento working with? Not someone who does it as a part-time thing, but their main function, their main mission is environmental justice and pollution, fighting to mitigate pollution. I did not hear in the presentation that name. I heard, community outreach, great, but what environmental justice group specifically is the county working with?
Yeah, Barry. So I think, just to answer the first question about the air monitoring, again, I think Young had touched on this, is that's all SMA QMD, as you are aware, it sounds like. And, I think we can look to them to answer your questions a little bit better. We can get back to you on some of that. And then as far as your second question, we do not have a current dedicated full-time environmental justice group in Sacramento County. That is not something that we currently have, unless I believe that we have a number of folks. I know the Department of Health and Human Services has a group that they have formed. I don't believe that they are full-time, but we are just learning about that through the Racial Equity Fair, and learning about even some of our internal stakeholders that are working on that. But as far as I know, there's no full-time person dedicated to that.
I appreciate
Barry, I just
your
wanted to add and
I'm sorry, go
clarify about the robust air quality monitoring system in South Sacramento. I have maybe characterized that. What I meant was that South Sacramento and Florin has recently got AB 617, which is a community air monitoring. And I think you mentioned that maybe this might not be the EPA level of that, and I think you may know more subject on this. But what I wanted to say was that our South Sacramento area has this program where they have a community air monitoring, and I will ask HUMD about more information on that. And when I meant that we wanted to expand, that was to expand this community air monitoring system and program into all EJ element. And as Joel had mentioned, we don't necessarily have a dedicated country-based organization that county works with in terms of pollution. But if you do have any ideas or know of any organization that works on those, we are more than happy to work and collaborate with them. And Barry, if you have more questions, please go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate your answer. Just answering your last question. Yes, Sacramento Environmental Justice Coalition is an environmental justice group that advocates and represents in 3 counties: Sacramento, Yolo, and Placer. The largest environmental justice group organization, I should say, in the Sacramento region, in the 9-county region, is the Sacramento Environmental Justice Coalition. And for not involving that organization as a part of the work that the county is doing is abominable. And yes, I am quite familiar with AB 617. In fact, I'm on the subcommittee of the South Sacramento Florin steering committee, but not as a registered member of the steering committee, but as a part of the subcommittee. I was asked to come in. Yes, I have some knowledge, and I would like to continue to share that knowledge in fighting, as we all are, hopefully, to mitigate the pollution in Sacramento. But when you have these type of tools readily available here in Sacramento and not being used, one has to wonder why not. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just pointing out what is here and available. And full disclosure, yes, I'm an ally and consultant to the Sacramento Environmental Justice Coalition. And Herman Barona, who was on earlier, is actually the community organizer and co-founder of that EJC. So there are plenty of readily available tools for you guys to reach out in your outreach that have been here. We show up at CARB meetings, the steering committee meetings for AB 617 and so forth. So it isn't as information isn't known. It's just that these tools aren't being implemented as a part of the plan to mitigate pollution here in Sacramento. Again, not pointing fingers, just simply stating tools are here, and I'm just befuddled on why they aren't being used.
Thank you, Barry. Yeah, we'll definitely reach out to our the Environmental Justice Coalition, SAC-EJC.org. Herman gave us the website. I'll definitely reach out. Hopefully we could attend one of the meetings if we're allowed to, and have, hopefully we could have some collaboration between EJC and the county.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate you guys, your time.
Thank you, Barry. Before I move to Herman, I wanted to get Brenda's question. Brenda, you had asked if food system action plan will be a priority. Yes, it has been priority since I could remember. It will always be a priority as this is a still work in progress plan. So this priority will continue on as hopefully we could finish this item. And Herman, you had a question about US EPA ethylene oxide about being present in North Highland. I do not actually have any knowledge to answer that question. However, I will do my best research and see what department or what agency is in charge of those carcinogen and hopefully get back to you with additional information. And you also had a hand up, so I'm going to allow you to talk. And before I move on, Barry, your hand is still up. Did you have additional questions or?
Sorry, I was slow to lower that hand. My apologies.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And then Herman, you are now allowed to talk. You still do have to unmute your mic. There we go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time. My name is Herman Barahona. I'm the community organizer for the Sacramento Environmental Justice Coalition. We are focused a lot on how environmental issues are affecting the poor, the marginalized. A lot of these priorities that I'm seeing here focus around development, transportation, on corridors that are being gentrified, like Oak Park and Stockton Boulevard. We'd love to see some contributions to communities that are incredibly marginalized, like North Highlands, where the US EPA has informed us that there's ethylene oxide and odorless carcinogen floating in a 5-mile radius in that area. There's definitely lots of things that we can explore here with this plan. And I think that the best way to include these kinds of concerns that the county could address is by including us, but also figuring out ways to keep us engaged in the long term. So funding is always necessary for this, for outreach, for interpreting, for meeting families where they're at nights and weekends, right? These are the kinds of outreach strategies that county employees can't do because you have an 8-to-5 schedule. Our nonprofit partners, we are made up of 25 nonprofit organizations that do public health and outreach and social justice work. So we'd be happy to engage with you guys, but it has to also meet the interest of our folks. And so that's the kind of conversation we're interested in engaging with the county when it comes to designing a climate, an environmental justice element that makes sense, that it's actually rooted in voices from the community. The other thing is we are very interested in joining your Blue Zones project. I heard from public health in the county that they're going to start talking about the Blue Zone project. I think this makes sense to connect it with an EJ element. Is that part of the conversation?
Yes, the Blue Zone, and that program is fully run by our Department of Public Health. But yeah, we actually have been invited to their kind of pre-stakeholder meeting, and they have been actually big in conversation with us. And you are exactly right. There are so many things that our EJ element and Blue Zone kind of has together, and they go together. And As I mentioned earlier, that whole racial equity fair was a really big opportunity for the planning department here to really get to know all the other department that actually works on these actual projects. Planning department sometimes limit to what we do in terms of the pollution that we talk about. There isn't something that we could do unless an entitlement project or when we're looking at the community. So we really have to rely on our partners such as our air quality management district and our public health and health services to promote all the other services as well. But we are so happy to see that there are active community-based organizations just like EJC. And I'm really happy to hear that you guys are willing to work with the county. We'll definitely be reaching out to you. So yeah, there are so many work that we still have to do, and I want to thank you for identifying your group as potential collaborator for moving forward with our environmental justice element.
Yeah, we look forward to it. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course, thank you. Barry, before I move to you, I'm going to just check the messages. Kelly, I'm going to answer your question. Just 1 second. Okay, Kelly had a question about how planning, our department, foresee implementing our EJ principles into communities with existing infrastructure that may not be getting updated or development soon, or okay. Yeah, I wanted to kind of update, maybe answer this in a few parts. For SEPTED, unfortunately, that really only triggers when the new developments come in because we don't really necessarily have power to go out to the community and have them fixed to our new standards. So that is something that we are limited in a way that only when we do see an entitlement come in, or not even entitlement, even design review come in, that's when we will start looking into SEPTED and design guideline to make sure that those projects will meet the new guidelines. In terms of the bike trails, we're working with our Department of Transportation, looking into our active transportation plan and including those prioritization table to look at which community and which projects will be green-lighted first. Joelle, do you have anything to add on to Kelly's question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, the Department of Transportation recently, well, at least in the last year, has hired a principal planner to oversee their ATP, their new ATP, and getting projects moving forward. So their position is to seek out grant funds and implement projects in communities such as the EJ communities. I know that they're working on a feasibility analysis on South Stockton and in South Sacramento to implement some ATP projects in that area. And I think that there's more to come there as well on North Watt Avenue. They're also working on Reimagine North Watt in concert with our Green Means Go SPA amendment. They're going to be looking at transportation, ways to improve transportation along that corridor. In fact, they've started public engagement on that as well. We were out at the North Highlands Park and Recreation District this last Saturday for a workshop, and then there's going to be some more to come. And we will certainly reach out to the folks that on this webinar, or those that would like to be involved.
Thank you. And Brenda, you gave us comment that establishing EJ Community Advisory Committee could be helpful. Yes, I agree. And I'm going to take that comment and kind of include it into our kind of comment received in there. And yes, and Barry, I'm going to, let's see. Okay. Barry, if you could unmute, you could talk now.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity one more time. I just wanted to make sure I heard correct also in your presentation that the climate plan is going to be a separate document, I'm using the document as for report outside of the outside of your housing, excuse me, outside of the county's housing element. Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, with that said, why would that take place? It should be a part of it, because working hand in hand, it seems like there seems to be separation, one lagging behind. More than likely it'll be the climate plan after the housing element is completed.
Yeah,
now-
so Barry, let me, sorry, I should clarify. So the housing element has been adopted, and we are working on the programs of the housing element. And certainly parts of the programs of the housing element are that we have an adopted cap. And there are other implementations and other elements of the general plan that implementation measures that call for the formation of this climate action plan. And so it is not separate. I shouldn't have said that. It is a standalone document that is a part of the general plan, which the housing element is a part of as well. So they are in concert together. So I wasn't sure what you're, yeah.
Okay, because you see where I was going with that, like wait,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do believe, I'm sorry, one quick last question. Oh, you had just said it, and I forgot, I should have wrote it down. It's not coming to mind, so my apologies.
Very,
Oh man, I can't remember, but once I remember, maybe I'll just email somebody.
Yes, email us a question, and then we'll answer and then post it along with the video here. And we'd be more than happy to answer that question for you. And parts of environmental justice implementation also calls for CAP. So like Joelle said, it is in, but it's a separate standalone document, but it's still part of our general plan because it's a part of our general plan implementation. So.
Right, repeating as Joel had stated, but how it came out, maybe it's just how I heard it. It sounded like two complete separate reports coming in, and that's why I was like, wait, how can you have one without the other? But thank you very much for clarifying.
Yeah. And then let me know if you remember the questions. Just send us an email. We'd be happy to answer that for you.
Unfortunately, no. I was mind wasn't moving, and wasn't moving as fast as the mind was.
That's all right.
Thank you.
All right. Barry, I'm going to mute you for a second. And Brenda, you had a question. Brenda, you still have to unmute, and then you can talk now. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, thank you so much. Good evening. I was wondering if your team has given any thought into how to feather or include aspects of SB 1383 into this. I'm just thinking measures, if we can get organic food recovery out of EJ zones and have a metric, for that, to show that there's been diversion out of the EJ communities of, methane producing organics. That would be a cool thing to maybe explore.
Okay. No, that's and SB 1383 is where we do the recovery from the small businesses, correct, Brenda?
There's
food
two
waste
aspects.
recovery, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's two aspects. Tier one, I think what you're describing is the large producers. So that's your grocery stores, your food manufacturers. But then there's tier two, which is other smaller, because tier one is by square footage. So the tier two is smaller square footage. So I guess I'm just saying, if there's if I'm just thinking out loud here, if there's a metric that we could start to collect via the SB 1383 work that says, hey, in the EJ communities through our programming, and Sacramento Food Bank is such an awesome partner in this work, but we've been able to divert, organics out of EJ zones and have a tonnage for it. Just that this is probably already existing data, but it just hasn't merged from that project or that work into this. So I think that would be a cool linkage to show, And then going forward to have, programming in EJ communities that has more outreach, more communication about, how to use the green bins properly to get methane out of our neighborhoods.
Thank you, Brenda. That's a great idea. And we've been working with Waste Management on kind of implementing SB 1383 and what planning needs to do in XYZ. And I'm going to reach out to Waste Management about your idea of having this kind of like dashboard that shows how much things that we have saved, and if we could differentiate from coming that from an EJ community, I think that'll be also really fun too. I do want to note that our climate action plan in the draft form does include a measure to increase organic waste diversion, but that is also a state requirement. So regardless, we'll be, as a county, working towards meeting the 75% by 2025, I believe. Yes. And definitely, Brenda, I will reach out to our waste management, I think Dave Verdelli, to share your ideas and see if they have those information and see if they're willing to create those dashboards for us.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Barry, yeah, I think you, yeah, go ahead, Barry.
Yes, thank you. I do appreciate the last caller. It jogged my memory.
Awesome.
And this is, I'll be brief. Where is all of the organic materials now being dumped? And is there a plan for an anaerobic digester to be built somewhere in Sacramento County?
Your first question is where is
The organic waste?
Yeah, organic waste being dumped. And if we have anaerobic digester or if we have a plans for it.
Correct.
I unfortunately don't have answer to both of the questions, but I know who to get the answers from. So I will provide that information to you and upload to our website for that. Sorry
Thanks,
about that.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank
but
you,
I do know who to contact. So I know how to get the information, Barry.
Okay, thank you.
So it is 7 o'clock. I just want to open the one last minute if anyone else has a question. If not, I just have one more minute to talk about what the next steps are. Okay, and if you do, just raise your hand while I talk about the very final next steps. So as I mentioned, we are really utilizing this survey to understand from everyone, you and your neighbors and community of what is needed. As I mentioned briefly, the survey is about 8 questions long on each subjects. This will be open until December 18th. That's Monday in 2 weeks. Once that's closed, we'll be reviewing and summarizing all the feedback, and we'll be working with our county leadership to understand the survey result and what we could do. And obviously, some of these survey results that we summarize will be on our website once we summarize those. And second portion is our annual report. So every year we report to our Board of Supervisors what we did on EJ Element. So we'll be preparing report card. If you haven't seen the report card, it's on our website. It actually outlines every single implementation measure for environmental justice element, and it has update on what we did on each year. So what I've been trying to do is to provide update on the previous year and the current year so that there's some histories. And it's one of our kind of almost like one document that you could kind of track to see where we are, how we're doing in terms of the how we're implementing each element. And again, these will also be presented to our Board of Supervisor along with their input for the priority projects for next year. If you haven't taken the survey, you could scan the QR code and go directly to our Survey Monkey, which will close on the 18th. If you have not received email from Environmental Justice Element mailing list, you can also scan the QR code on the bottom and sign up for your email list as well. And Herman or Barry, I know it might be a lot to ask, but if you could perhaps email us so we could contact you and maybe hopefully get some collaboration started between the county and your EJC. We would love to work with you for future programs and implementation measure that we have on here as well. So this is the end of our stakeholder meeting. I want to thank everyone here who came to this webinar. I know it's raining and you guys have a lot of other important things to do, but I really do appreciate everyone taking their time and showing up today. I know I mentioned multiple times for someone who's has been working on our EJ element for the last 3 years. I do really see that the county as a whole, entire department and all the other agency is now starting to understand and actually aware of environmental justice element. And I think that speaks to a lot of the work that we are seeing in the county, that we are more and more trying to incorporate the principles of environmental justice element into everything that we do. And also want to update that, public health has this new unit just focused on racial equity. So just by seeing all these different things that and our board has establishing our youth master youth behavior board, I do see that the county is moving into the good direction. Of course, we could do way better and we need to do better, but I really do appreciate everyone, our stakeholders coming to this webinar today. As I mentioned, our email address is always open. It's envjustice@saccounty.gov. We are always happy to collaborate with you, whether it's a single individual, a citizen, or even our community-based organization. We would love to understand what the problems are, and we would love to see what your ideas are about. So with that, thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a great evening tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Miki. I will definitely, I got your comment. I will definitely work on a lot of acronyms and future meetings. Thank you for the comment.
Thank you, guys. And SAC EJC will be in contact with you guys. Thank you.
Perfect. I'll look out for the email. Thank you, Barry. And I'll work on your questions as well.
Appreciate it. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
All
Have a
right.
good evening.
Thank you. And thank you, Brenda. Always good to see you or hear you.
Sure. We'll catch up soon. Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Young.